Good morning, Bucket Pond family. Welcome back. Today I have a special video for you. I'm going to show you how I run maintenance on our jar aquariums. Now, I'm lazy. I try not to do a lot of maintenance, but every few months, there are some things that you have to do. This is a flower vase jar aquarium meant to raise bladder snails, paramecium, tubiflex, and dayflower plants. So in this jar, we have quite a few things going on. This jar is, 2 or 3 months old at this point. It looks great. These are cuttings from one of my actual fish aquariums, and I just threw them in here a while back and started up this jar. It has no substrate, and I'm pretty happy with it. So we have two large dayflower stems coming out of the surface of the jar, and don't be confused. Some of those stems in the background are actually from other jar aquariums. I need to do maintenance on them as well, but I'll do that off screen. So this is our Bengal dayflower, I believe. It's a little larger, and we're going to pluck a few leaves, but it's a little larger than our original dayflower that we tend to work with called climbing dayflower. This Bengal dayflower, it's a little bit easier to maintain, it's a little bit more durable, and it's a little larger. But I'm clipping a few of these wilted leaves off the bottom. I'm not quite sure why dayflower does that. I think it's just part of how it grows. As it gets taller, it abandons the leaves on the lower parts. But it could be a nutrient issue or something. But either way, the plant looks pretty good. And we're just throwing those leaves right back into the jar, into the vase. We actually got this vase from Chewy.com, and it came with roses in it. I am trying to grow the roses as we speak with mixed results. But yeah, the flower vase is really beautiful, and we love Chewy. But I'm going to use a piece of damp cloth now, actually a damp paper towel, to scrub the surface of the jar. This is pretty common. Aquarium people have to do this type of thing all the time, mostly to remove calcium that builds up at the surface of the water, and little bits of debris and material from the plants as they press against the glass, as well as bladder snail egg sacs. When they hatch, they leave a little bit of residue behind. And also we have Tubiflex worms in here, which will actively crawl up to the surface and kind of form their little colonies and stuff. So we're just going to wipe everything down. I'm not too worried about disturbing these plants and bumping them, moving them around a little bit. They are very durable, very hardy. Um, Honestly, they seem to like to be handled. I know that sounds weird, but when I interact with dayflower plants like this, they tend to grow more rapidly. So now we're going to just dust off the outside of the jar, polish it a little bit. I see this a lot with my friends on Facebook. You will have a lot of dust on your jar. I'm very self-conscious about that, actually, especially if you have cats. So remember to, wipe off the jar occasionally. But that looks much better. And if we're lucky, you might even see a few bladder snails down there in the water. You can see our water level is right there at the apex. Um, Honestly, I could make it a little higher. I might do that. But you might be wondering why I threw those leaves back into the jar. And that's because we're going to basically compost them, just like you would at home. You would throw your leaves into a pile and you would, come back and worms and things would eat it and turn it into good fertile soil. So in a jar aquarium like this, those leaves will be eaten and broken down by our bladder snails and our paramecium, which hopefully you can see here. But our tubiflex worms, everybody will break down those leaves, and the waste that they leave behind will then become fertilizer for the plants. It's kind of like a cycle. It's not a perfect cycle. I do have to introduce more material over time. But here we have something that might trigger some of you guys. We have a house spider. I believe that's what they call it, what they are called. That's the common name that I use for them, a house spider. I'm sure they can bite humans, but I've never been bitten. I'm pretty careful. But these guys, these girls, I guess, they serve an important role in my jar aquariums. That's right, we actually have spiders in our jars. And at first I didn't like it, but if you see that little grub thing down to the bottom right of the spider, that is a fly moth larva. Fly moths are a big problem for me. They will get into your jar aquarium, they will lay their eggs, and they will cause massive devastation. Their larvae will consume tubiflex worms. I've seen them go into a colony of tubiflex and just eat them up. So that spider there, she will catch a couple fly moths and prevent them from getting down into the jar. And I am going to manually remove that grub thing right there, that larva. And we're going to try not to remove our own Tubiflex worms right there on the left. But yeah, guys, I don't know if I've ever shown you our spiders that we keep in the jars. And I don't know how you'll feel about that. There's another one right there. I got to get out. Mostly these fly moth larvae, they will hang around the surface of the jar. So we're just going to do a quick scan and see if we can find any more of them. We should be okay, but this is part of my maintenance routine. I want to remove them as I see them. They got into the $10 Nano Aquarium, and it's very upsetting when they get into something, you know. I try to focus on like a live and let live type of mentality, but fly moth larvae, they are the enemy. I hate to say it. I have to remove them. I cannot have them. But here we have a nice bladder snail coming up for a breath of air, and they look good. I'm going to increase the number of bladder snails in here. We're going to do a little outbreeding by introducing some snails from a different population. These snails originally came from my crayfish aquarium, and I think we're going to bring some snails from the bowfront tank in here as well. But here's our Tubiflex worms. There's only a few of them, and I can see that only one of them actually has any material in its digestive system. They are translucent, so it's very easy to see what they've been eating. But the other ones in his little cluster here, they are completely hollow. They have no food, and they look hungry. So we're going to have to feed this tank a bit more often. I need to increase the feeding schedule. That's very important. So now we're going to take some of our tiny white detritus worms from this live culture and inject them into our flower vase jar aquarium. I'm also going to inoculate the black cow experimental jars with these detritus worms as well. These are my most favorite little worms. They're really cool. They're free swimming and they're very active and they reproduce very quickly. So we're going to use them to help break down any loose food, any mold, any fallen leaves and things that need to be eaten up. These guys will help us out. So that's the live culture on the right, and that's our flower vase aquarium that we're looking at today on the left. The lighting will have changed a bit. It will be more of a brown tint to it, and that's the light that I have for this project. These lights are incredibly bright and very hot, so I can only use this lighting for a short time. I just wanted to show you guys and make sure that you can see everything. These lights actually will grow plants very quickly, but they'll also cook the jar aquariums, so I can only use these lights for a very short time. But that's all I'm doing right here. I'm just injecting some water samples of the detritus worm culture into our other projects. It's very easy to do. And in my experience, the worms will either take to the jar or they won't, and I'll have to inject them again in the future. But generally, they're pretty durable and they're very easy to spread around. So that's our flower vase aquarium, and now I want to increase the number of bladder snails in here. That's as simple as taking a scoop of duckweed from my bowfront aquarium and just dropping it in there. You'll see a couple bladder snails fall to the the bottom of the vase as we do this. This will increase the bladder snail's breeding behavior, and that duckweed will help to prevent the fly moth larvae from getting down into the water. So we only have 2 stems of dayflower in here, and that's fine. You can cut one of these. You can cut it right there at the surface of the water and leave it 1 or 2 leaves and just throw the cutting into the jar and it will grow again. And that's how I doubled my dayflower and I quadrupled it and I just kept going and going until I had so much. And yeah, dayflower is very fun. But judging by the root system in here in this jar, I don't think that we need to make any cuttings. Not yet, anyway. And there's actually a few leaves that are down here under the water, which is unusual for dayflower. Usually those leaves will not make it. So I don't want to mess with these 2 plants too much. If they're making leaves down under the water level, like that's really cool, and I'm interested to see what happens. They also have a lot of roots in here. They're very well established, and this Bengal dayflower is even more aggressive than our climbing dayflower. It also wants to get a bit taller without the wilting issue that we see elsewhere. So we're going to add a few more pets to this project. I am going to increase the feeding schedule on this vase, this flower vase aquarium. So I want to add a couple of our larger snails just to keep things moving. I don't want to overfeed the tank. That's a big concern. So I'm going to add a few ramshorn snails here. This is a red ramshorn. And I also have a few brown ramshorns as well. I think they're the same species. It's just a color morph, like an albino. I could be wrong. But we're just going to add 2 or 3 of our ramshorns in here, and they'll help to chew up those leaves and to keep things rolling. And yeah, that's all there is to it, really. I love this flower vase aquarium. The duckweed will cut down on the oxygen down in the water a bit, but I'm not too worried about that. I run duckweed in most of my stuff, and it doesn't hurt anything. You know, our plants are very active, our snails are very active. Everything's constantly moving around and disturbing the surface of the water quite a bit. But in a worst case scenario, I can just pull a little duckweed out of here and use it to start another culture. So that's how I run maintenance on my jars. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. I'll have another video for you soon. That tank just wasn't ready yet.